Trust has no value. Turns out it's the only thing that has value. Sounds like the cheesiest quote in the world, and I got it from the cheesiest of all places. I got this as a comment under one of my YouTube videos. Not sure if this was actually done by a real human or by a bot, but I still found an interesting thing to think about, just in the context of Bitcoin, in the context of crypto, in the context of fiat currencies. Because there is this saying on the US dollar note, right? In God we trust, I believe. And people talk about the blockchain, that it's trustless, that you do not have to trust your custody of your funds to a third party. People cannot take the money away from you. But what really gives value then to fiat? What gives value to Bitcoin? Because people say fiat doesn't have intrinsic value. Bitcoin was created out of thin air as well. But both are payment mechanisms, both are assets people are willing to work for. People ascribe some value to. People are willing to put effort in to acquire. So what is really going on? Value of an asset that's not intrinsic, as in that's not inherent in the asset itself. For example, for corn, right, you could either trade corn or you could eat corn. But for, say, fiat currencies or for Bitcoin, you don't have intrinsic value. That kind of value comes from the trust of people. It comes from the network effects. Why does a dollar bill, right? Why does this piece of paper have value? It's because people think that you can use it in the future, again, to trade something with, right? So the network, simply just the trust of a lot of people in this piece of paper, underlines the value of fiat. Now, I'm not a fan of fiat currencies, right? But in this regard, trust in the system, Bitcoin and fiat isn't that different. Fiat is simply just promoted by the government as well, because they can inflate it away, because they have a strong incentive to get its adoption running. Bitcoin isn't incentivized by governments, broadly speaking, but it is very much promoted by its community. Both are trust-based. Both are pretty much brand-based even, right? Why do people in weaker economies that have weaker currencies, why do they prefer to save some money in the US dollar? It's because they trust the US government more to deflate the currency less than the local government. That's why the money flows over. Why do people put money in Bitcoin? It's because people think that the adoption of Bitcoin potentially is going to grow, and it's going to outgrow the inflation, as in the new tokens that are getting mined every year. They're now 1.7%, soon half of that. So in the end, there's actually fundamentally, the way how it mechanically works, not that much difference between fiat currencies and Bitcoin. The only difference is Bitcoin is independent of governments and Bitcoin doesn't get inflated away. You can still self-custody both your fiat currency as well as your Bitcoin. That's actually not that different. But the difference is simply in the risk profile, the kinds of risks that you take on. When you have fiat currency, right, where you simply just have the cash in your hand, you take on the risk that the government stays relevant, that the government stays solvent, and that the money doesn't get inflated away. When you take on Bitcoin, when you're holding Bitcoin, you also have a risk. You've got the risk that the network still stays relevant, right? As people continue adopting it. The adoption metrics now look great, but imagine the number of wallets that hold, say, 0.1 Bitcoin would be stagnant or would even be falling, right? The adoption of the network wouldn't grow anymore, and we would see this over several years. I'm not sure where Bitcoin would be going. Maybe something new would be coming along, right? Nobody knows if Bitcoin will be replaced with something else at some point. So far, it appears that Bitcoin has the strongest brand. But that's in the end what it all is, right? Fiat has the brand, the government-supported brand. Bitcoin has a brand because it's the very first cryptocurrency with the largest market cap, largest adoption, largest computing power, etc. It's simply just a brand to a degree. It's the trust that the thing will continue to run longer and longer. And I believe that the risk-to-reward profile, of course, for Bitcoin is great. That's why I've got a lot of money in this. I believe also that adoption continues rising. We see a lot of additional accumulation by the ETFs. So those things currently look all good. But this doesn't mean that this has to still be the case 50 or 100 years from now. There could be at some point a replacement potentially. Am I betting on this with the altcoins? No, I'm not. Right? For me, altcoin betting is mainly speculation. I do not think that if there will be a replacement for Bitcoin at some point, that this will actually come out of the altcoin market. It might be something completely different. But the way I see this is, I am to a degree a Bitcoin maximalist, that I do believe the vast majority of the portfolio and the vast majority of times also should be in Bitcoin, at least of the crypto portfolio. But at the same time, I'm not a maximalist to the degree that I say there will never be something ever that comes around that could replace this. Monetary systems and monetary assets have changed all the time, right? It went from seashells to, I don't know, some stone rings, to metals, to now Bitcoin, right? Fiat, Bitcoin, banking system. So we have very different forms of money, and they evolve and they become more and more abstract over time. Nothing says that there can't be another evolution of this again going forward that's even better than what we currently have. It's very much possible. And I do believe even that this evolution of kinds of monies might be accelerating, similar to other technologies also tend to accelerate, right? The technological progress gets faster and faster, things get replaced faster and faster. Growing companies tend to grow faster and faster, as in they reach billion-dollar valuations way quicker nowadays than, say, 10 years ago. So all of these things accelerate. The change itself accelerates. And so maybe at some point we will also see something better than Bitcoin. It might not be a cryptocurrency, it might be something completely different. So far though, I believe at the best risk to reward is still in Bitcoin. But let's not be too maximalist about this, right? Let's keep our eyes always open, and let's always very much question ourselves and look at the data, at the adoption data. If it's your first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish videos regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. And there's also a free Telegram. Link is down below. Cheers.